They were just 5 soldiers, dropped into the forests of Draken 4 with one mission: investigate an unknown signal of non-terrestrial origin. The galactic core worlds, humans were still a minor species. Statistically chaotic, biologically unstable, socially erratic, no real threat. The kind of species you catalog and monitor, like a distant wildfire that might burn out on its own. The Coalition had encountered thousands of species across the spiral arms, but none like us. Sergeant Gabriel Rivas checked his visor. Blue static flickered across his HUD. The air was thick, metallic. Visibility: 30 meters, max. Command: this is Echo 1. We're at the source, he said, voice low. No visible structures, just trees, and something's wrong with the ground. It's pulsing. Corporal Mendez, the team's scout, knelt and tapped into the soil with a sensor. Organic tech, Sarge. Living metal. And it's listening. Private Kovac scanned the trees with his thermal scope. Nothing on thermals. But I swear I saw movement between sectors Bravo and Charlie. Hold fire, Rivas replied. We don't spook ghosts. Above them, holographic projections flickered into life. 2 alien faces, pale and flawless. Their eyes black voids. No expression. No soul. Coalition species, whispered Lieutenant Kira Mahir, the tech officer. Classification: Zerati. Emotionless. Highly logical. Apex strategists. They don't make mistakes. And yet, here they were, broadcasting their presence. Feels like a trap, Kovac muttered, locking a new mag into his railgun. And I don't like being bait. Suddenly, the air changed. The cold became colder. The forest went dead silent. Then, a hum, deep, mechanical, alive. Echo 1, I have movement, lots of it. Mahir shouted. Grid northwest. Coming fast. From the mist emerged shadows, tall, perfect silhouettes. The Zerati had arrived. Not cloaked, not hidden. They wanted to be seen. They marched in eerie unison. No verbal commands. No emotion. Just precision. A dance of death rehearsed for millennia. Eyes up, Rivas ordered. Do not engage. Yet. But the enemy didn't care about protocol. A sphere of plasma ignited midair. Then another, blue light flashed. The first shot wasn't fired by a human. Mendez collapsed. No sound. No scream. Just gone. Vaporized. For a split second, no one moved. Not out of fear, but calculation. Cover right. Rivas roared, snapping into action. Kira, jam their feed. Kovac, suppressive fire. They'd just declared war, and they had no idea what kind of monster they'd just woken up. The galaxy didn't know what humans were truly capable of. Not yet, but it was about to learn. The forest lit up with ghost blue flashes as Kovac opened fire. His railgun roared like thunder in a bottle. Explosive tungsten rounds ripped through the trees, forcing the Zerati back behind cover. If they even felt fear. Movement flanking left, shouted Mahir, ducking as a spear of plasma grazed her shoulder. Her armor held, barely. They're adapting fast. Then adapt faster, Rivas barked. Engage on full lethal. No holds. The squad split instinctively, years of training kicking in like muscle memory. Kovac laid down a withering barrage, forcing the enemy to regroup. Mahir rerouted drone support from orbit, deploying 2 aerial scouts into the smoke. Simmons, the quiet one, now spoke. They're not using traditional comms. They're linked. What do you mean linked? Rivas growled, firing a burst into a charging Zerati. The alien shattered like glass under pressure. I'm picking up neural sync pulses. They're operating on shared consciousness. Every move they make, it's coordinated in real time. Like fingers of one mind. That should have made them unstoppable. Predictive. Efficient. But that's also what made them vulnerable. Then let's give them what they can't process, Rivas muttered. Chaos. He tossed a variable gravity grenade into the clearing. The explosion twisted the air, imploding time and space for 2 seconds. The Zerati nearest were crushed flat like paper. Holy shit, Simmons whispered. You just gravity flipped 6 of them. They shouldn't have killed Mendez, Rivas said flatly, voice cold. Overhead, the drones transmitted an image. Hundreds of life forms closing in from the ridge. This is a scouting party, Mahir realized aloud. The real force is inbound. The squad fell back to a rocky ravine, a natural choke point. They'd been trained for this. They knew how to fight outnumbered, overwhelmed. Forgotten.as the Zerati re-engaged. Their silent coordination faltered. Mahir flooded their local network with synthetic fear signals, a virus designed to emulate panic. It worked for 3 seconds, but 3 seconds was enough. Kovac moved like a machine, grinning as he emptied another mag. Apex strategist my ass. Then the ground shook. Not from the battle, from something underneath. Rivas, Simmons said, his voice hollow. You need to see this. A fissure opened near the team. From its depths, an ancient structure pulsed with violet light. Alien, and not Zerati. Older. Unfamiliar. What the hell is this planet? Mahir whispered, but there was no time to question, because out of the fissure rose something else, and even the Zerati stopped firing. The battlefield froze. Even the Zerati, who until now had marched with inhuman precision, paused. Their heads turned. Unblinking, scanning. The structure rising from the fissure was jagged, obsidian black, etched with symbols that flickered in ultraviolet wavelengths. No translation protocol could parse it. No coalition database matched it. It was pre-language. Prehistory. What is that thing? Kovac asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's not in any archive, Mahir said, her fingers flying over her tablet. This isn't Zerati tech. Hell, this isn't even tech. This is a tomb. The alien construct pulsed again. The ground throbbed beneath their feet like a heartbeat. Then came the sound. Low, like whale's song mixed with metal tearing. A resonance that made the human team flinch, but made the Zerati recoil. They're scared, Simmons said in disbelief. They're actually scared. Rivas narrowed his eyes. Why? From the light emerged a being, twice the height of a man, cloaked in shadow that shimmered like oil. It didn't walk. It floated. Eyes burned like stars gone supernova point. One of the Zerati stepped forward, raising its hand in a greeting gesture. The being looked at it, and the Zerati's body folded inward in a blink, crushed by an invisible force that didn't make a sound. Silence, then chaos. The Zerati opened fire, not on the humans, but on the entity. Their plasma bolts did nothing. The thing moved through them like fog through steel. They weren't soldiers now. They were insects trying to stop a firestorm. Kovac laughed, half panicked, half thrilled. This is so far above our pay grade. Fall back, Rivas ordered. We let them die. We find cover. No, Mahir said, eyes locked on her feet. We watch. This thing, it doesn't recognize us as a threat. Not yet. That's leverage. Dozens of Zerati lay disintegrated. The entity turned toward the humans, its eyes narrowing. Curious.it tilted its head, and Rivas stepped forward. Kovac hissed. What the hell are you doing? Rivas dropped his weapon and raised his hands. If this thing wanted us dead, we'd be gone already. The being spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in thought. You are not of the network. You are not of the architects. What are you? Rivas answered the only way he could. We're human. A pause. Then the being responded again. You are chaos. You are anomaly. You are potential. The light dimmed. The being vanished into the mist. The remaining Zerati, what few hadn't fled, lowered their weapons and looked at the humans. And for the first time in coalition history, they backed away, retreated, not because they lost, but because something worse had chosen to spare the humans. Location, Orbital Command Center, Earth's moon. Black Site Omega. Status, restricted. Ultra classified. Clearance level Alpha. 0. General Helena Miles stared at the holographic feed flickering in front of her. It was the last transmission from Echo Squad, timestamped 37 minutes ago. Static, then screaming, then silence. I want full sensor playback of that anomaly on Draken 4, she said, ice in her voice. The AI assistant responded, tone flat. No visual data available. Drone uplinks terminated simultaneously. All monitoring satellites have gone dark. How? She demanded. There is no known method. This was not interference. This was erasure. The room fell silent. Beside her, Director Vaughn of the Terran Intelligence Bureau leaned forward. So we've lost a Tier 5 Special Operations Unit, total blackout across 3 surveillance layers, and the last transmission includes an unidentified structure and a presence? Miles clenched her jaw. Yes. Vaughn exhaled slowly. Then we have to consider the impossible. You think this was the Zerati? One analyst asked. Vaughn shook his head. No. The Zerati don't hide their kills. If they'd wiped Echo Squad, they'd have broadcast it to the entire coalition. He tapped on the console, pulling up a waveform. This is what worries me. The waveform wasn't sound. It was brainwave activity, recorded from Sergeant Rivas's neural link just before blackout. It didn't match human patterns, or Zerati, or anything in the known archives. It spiked right before the signal dropped, Vaughn said. And it's still transmitting. The analysts looked at each other. Still transmitting? From where? General Miles asked. Vaughn's face went pale. From Earth. Somewhere in the Arctic Circle. And it started 5 minutes after the anomaly appeared on Draken 4. The room went cold. A junior officer whispered. You think something came back? Miles turned to the warboard. Prep all rapid response teams. Triple the blackout zones. This doesn't go public. Not yet. Not ever. But ma'am, the officer said, hesitating. If something made contact, shouldn't we alert the UN Science Accord? No, Vaughn and Miles said in unison. This isn't diplomacy, Miles continued. This is survival. She paused. Echo Squad went into the dark. And whatever they found, it noticed them. It spoke to them. Now it knows we exist. No one spoke. Outside the station's viewing window, Earth floated, beautiful, unaware. The light faded. The battlefield was quiet now, too quiet. Rivas stood still, eyes fixed on the chasm. No one said a word. Even Kovac, usually the first to crack a joke after a firefight, stayed silent. The alien structure below still pulsed with that unnatural rhythm, steady, alive. Mahir broke the silence. We should extract. This isn't in the mission profile. Rivas shook his head. We're not leaving until we know what the hell that thing is. Simmons, scanning the data feed, looked pale. It's growing. What? The tomb. It's expanding inward, like a labyrinth building itself. A faint hum rose from the opening, so low it vibrated through bone. Lights began to pulse along the walls, leading downward. An invitation. Or a trap. Grab your gear, Rivas ordered. We're going in. They descended slowly, weapons drawn. The walls were covered in carvings. Alien, fractal, shifting if stared at too long. Mahir tried scanning them. I'm getting concepts, not words. It's projecting meaning directly into our minds. What kind of meaning? Asked Kovac, already unnerved. She hesitated. Dominance, hunger, curiosity, pain, joy, all at once. It's like being stared at by a god trying to remember your name. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. The architecture was non-Euclidean. Angles that shouldn't exist bent around them. They passed a chamber where a Zerati body was embedded into the wall, frozen mid-scream. Not dead. Not alive. Just paused. Nope, Kovac muttered. Absolutely not. I want my old job back. Filing reports. Being bored. This is cursed. They reached the core. A massive sphere floated above a pit of shifting light. Liquid, endless, alive. Inside the sphere, forms moved. Humanoid. Alien. Twisting in and out of dimensions like smoke trapped underwater. Then the voices came. All at once. Whispered. Booming. Human. Alien. Child. Machine. You are the first TOC. You are the last to understand. Mahir dropped to one knee, clutching her head. Simmons screamed. Blood ran from his nose. Rivas stepped forward, shaking, and shouted into the void. What do you want from us? The voices quieted. Then one single thought came. Clear. Cold. You woke us. Then, silence. The lights dimmed. The sphere cracked, just slightly. A sliver, and they felt it. Something had just looked back. They climbed out of the tomb in silence, and no words. No debrief. No jokes. Just the sound of boots against cracked alien stone. Above them, the sky of Draken 4 had changed. The stars were wrong. They'd only been inside for 20 minutes, tops. But their systems said 12 hours had passed. Kovac was the first to break. Someone explain how the sky's moving. No celestial shift on record could account for this. Mahir whispered, scanning frantically. It's like the whole sector moved. Or we did. Simmons hadn't spoken since they'd seen the sphere crack. His eyes stayed fixed forward. Glassy. As if listening to something no one else could hear, Rivas turned to him. Simmons. Status. No answer. Kovac moved to him. Hey man. Snap out of. Simmons turned suddenly, fast. Too fast. His eyes black. His mouth opened. And then, he screamed. But it wasn't Simmons' voice. It was thousands. It echoed with words and languages none of them knew, yet understood perfectly. Names of stars long dead, coordinates of systems that never existed, cries of things still unborn. Mahir hit him with a neural stabilizer. He dropped like a stone. Rivas breathed heavy. Something came back with us. From orbit, Earth Command patched in, finally. Static flooded the comms, then a voice. Echo. 1. This is Command. You are ordered to stand by for orbital extraction. They were getting pulled out. Good. But none of them felt relief. Back aboard the ship, Medtechs isolated Simmons in stasis. But even through the thick glass, his lips moved, whispering that what's worse, he wasn't alone. Mahir started hearing things in her dreams. Kovac's eyes bled briefly, and then healed overnight. Rivas saw flashes in the mirrors, himself, standing behind himself. Within 48 hours, they were en route to Earth. The nightmares spread. A comms tech aboard the cruiser had a seizure after reviewing the data logs from the tomb. He drew the same spiral symbol over and over on the wall with his blood before collapsing. No one talked about it, but everyone knew. They didn't just survive Drake and Ford, they'd opened it, and something followed them back. Not in a ship, not in a fleet. In them. Earth Command thought they could contain it. Echo Squad was quarantined the moment they touched down. Underground, 300 meters beneath the Mojave Defense Complex, Level 9, Red Zone. No contact, no communication, no media. They weren't prisoners, but they weren't soldiers anymore either, at least. That's what the brass thought. 3 days in, Kovac punched through reinforced glass with his bare hand. When they tried to sedate him, he quoted an ancient Zarati war poem, one that hadn't been heard in over 9,000 years. Perfect pronunciation. He didn't speak Zarati. He shouldn't even know it existed. They sedated him for real after that. Mahir stopped sleeping. When questioned, she claimed dreams had become two-way streets. Every time she closed her eyes, something looked back. Not curious, not hostile, just waiting. Meanwhile, Simmons hadn't moved. Still comatose, still whispering. Only now, the words were changing, not random, structured, mathematical, like equations describing reality itself. The facility's AI couldn't even process some of them. One equation caused a server to overheat without power input. IT burned a spiral into the metal casing before shutting down. The medics? They started quitting. Quietly. Some just vanished. Rivas, though, he was different, stable, controlled, silent. Command thought he'd held it together, but Rivas was already preparing. Each morning, he did something no one noticed at first. He traced a specific pattern on the floor of his cell with his boot, geometric, complex, and absolutely not random. A tech reviewing surveillance paused the feed. "I've seen this pattern before," she whispered. "It's from the tomb." Within 2 hours, she was reassigned. Within 12, she was dead. Car accident. No body shown to family. By day 9, Earth Command lost control of the Mojave complex. Not to a breach. To silenced. No communications. No response. No alarms. Just one static image broadcast from every terminal. A spiral, the same one from the tomb. The Mojave facility wasn't the only one compromised. Within days, containment protocols triggered across 6 other black sites: London, Siberia, Johannesburg, Sao Paulo, New Reykjavik, and Luna Prime. All for the same reason: a spiral, not drawn, not carved, dreamed, patients, soldiers, scientists, civilians, all describing it in perfect detail. A pattern none had ever seen, yet all could replicate. The UN Defense Accord authorized uprising protocol, a last resort countermeasure for memetic contamination. Every affected site was ordered shut down. Personnel isolated. Data purged. But it was already too late. Something had shifted in the human population. In Santiago, a child stood on a rooftop and whispered coordinates in a dead dialect of Prothean, a language never deciphered by Earth linguists. In Tokyo, every screen blinked for 0.7 seconds at 3:13 a.m. No one noticed at first, but those who did stopped sleeping, stopped speaking, began drawing spirals on their skin. Across the globe, panic simmered under the surface. News networks stayed quiet, governments coordinated silence. But whispers spread faster than light. An Echo Squad, they were gone. Not dead, not escaped. Just gone. Security footage from their cells showed nothing unusual until viewed in reverse. Then the cameras showed four silhouettes walking backward out of frame. Mahir, Kovac, Rivas, and Simmons. Still comatose. Still whispering. Director Vaughn called it anomalous quantum bleed. General Miles called it something else. Phase 1. She activated Protocol Theta. Underground bunkers opened. Civilian surveillance increased by 500%. PsyOps flooded every network with distractions, celebrity deaths, staged scandals, artificial catastrophes. But the spirals kept appearing. Graffiti on subway walls, chalk drawings by children in parks, crop circles, perfect spirals, burned into the earth without heat. The enemy hadn't just followed Echo Squad back, IT had rewritten the rules, and now it was learning. It began in Lagos at 4:03 a.m. local time. Every wireless device in the city powered on simultaneously. Even those disconnected from power grids, no images, no audio, just spirals. Rotating slowly, counterclockwise. Hypnotic. 2 minutes later, 10,000 people walked into the streets, silently. No phones, no bags, no shoes. Just blank stares and perfect calm. At first, local authorities believed it was a mass psychotic break. Then the same thing happened in Mumbai. Then Rio. Then Berlin. By noon Universal Time coordinated. Over 30 million people worldwide had entered what analysts called a receptive state. No speech, no hunger, no aggression. Just waiting. General Miles reviewed the data from deep inside the Zurich command vault. "They're sinking," she muttered. Director Vaughn stood beside her. With what? No one knew. Not even the AI models. The most advanced predictive system humanity had ever created, Athena Protocol, crashed while attempting to simulate the global spiral cascade. It didn't return errors. It just stopped, like it had understood. Meanwhile, underground servers picked up a signal. Not radio, not microwave. Neural. A pulse resonating at exactly 11.13 Hz. Across the globe. It matched the brainwave activity of one man. Simmons, the one who hadn't spoken since Draken 4. But he wasn't silent anymore. At 11:11 a.m., Simmons appeared in a surveillance feed, standing in the center of Times Square, New York, wearing civilian clothes. Eyes still black. Still whispering. He walked calmly to the largest display. Then he smiled and said one sentence. "It is awake." All at once, people began to move, not in chaos, not in fear, but in harmony. The spiral had turned, and now it was turning us. The United Nations ceased to exist 72 hours after the emergence event. What rose in its place wasn't a government. It wasn't even human. They called it the Spiral Accord. No one voted for it. No one designed IT. IT simply was, born through thought, spread through symmetry. Within days, a third of Earth's population had entered the receptive state. Calm, connected, their movements unified by an unseen rhythm. Work halted. Wars ended. Cities went silent. It looked like peace, but it wasn't peace. It was surrender. General Miles refused the accord. So did Australia, parts of Canada, the South African resistance, and isolated strongholds in Alaska, Greenland, and Antarctica. What was left of old Earth became the fracture zones, regions untouched by the neural signal. Why? No one knew. Something about the magnetic poles, natural resonance frequencies, or maybe just luck. Inside the fracture, humanity fought to remain unlinked, but it was a losing war. The awakened, humans integrated into the spiral signal, didn't need weapons. They didn't storm borders or drop bombs. They just stood outside fracture zones, silent, staring, waiting, and sometimes one would whisper, "That's all it took." One whispered. A soldier in Norway defected after a dream. A scientist in Alaska walked into the snow without boots. Entire bases went dark overnight. The signal wasn't attacking. It was calling home. Inside Command Vault 4, a resistance AI flagged a surge in spontaneous spiral ideation. People across unconnected regions drawing the same symbols during sleep. It had spread into the subconscious collective. "We're losing our species," Vaughn said, pacing. "No," Miles corrected. "We're splitting it. A new kind of evolution. One not defined by DNA, but by cognition." What Echo Squad had triggered on Draken 4 wasn't just a warning. It was a test, and now Earth was answering. 2 paths. One future, chosen not by action, but by thought itself. The world hadn't heard from Echo Squad since the Mojave collapse. Their status, presumed Kia, their bodies, unrecovered, their files, sealed under Omega Black, buried deeper than any nuclear launch code. And then, they reappeared. Not on the battlefield, not in a lab, but inside Vault 7, an off-grid Antarctic facility thought to be immune to spiral influence. One by one, they materialized in the cold, surrounded by snow and silence. NO dropship, NO footprints. Just there. Rivas stood at the front. His uniform was old, tattered, but his posture? Flawless. Military. Human his eyes? Not quite. Mahir stood behind him, her skin marked with shifting lines, subdermal spirals glowing faintly under frost. Kovac was grinning. Always grinning. His pupils now fractal-shaped, as if they looped inward. And Simmons? He didn't walk, that he floated, still whispering. Vault 7 security teams surrounded them immediately. Weapons raised. Orders shouted. Rivas raised a hand. Stand down, he said. Calm. Commanding. The guards didn't move, but one by one, they lowered their weapons, not out of obedience, but recognition. They remembered. Echo Squad had saved Earth before, in a dozen shadow wars. Hundreds of ops never made public. But this wasn't Echo Squad anymore. It was something more. Rivas spoke again. We're not your enemies. Mahir added, we're not Spiral, either. We were human, said Kovac. And maybe we still are. A pause. Then Simmons lifted his eyes. The whispering stopped. For the first time in weeks, he spoke aloud. It's watching what will become. Vault 7's command staff stood frozen. No protocol covered this. NO resistance strategy prepared them for the hybrids. Humans enhanced by spiral interface, yet not enslaved. Rivas stepped forward. There's no time for debate, he said. The spiral accord is accelerating. They're planning a convergence event, Mahir explained. A unification. Permanent. Total. In 13 days, Simmons said. At 1313 Universal Time Coordinated. Earth stops being Earth. Rivas looked directly into the surveillance feed. Fracture Command, you need to make a decision. He extended his hand. We're the only ones who can navigate what's coming. And if you don't trust us, Kovac cracked his knuckles. You already lost. 13 days, that's all humanity had left. Not until extinction. Something worse, that synchronization. At exactly 1313 Universal Time Coordinated on the 13th day, the Spiral Accord would initiate total convergence. A psychic cascade designed to unify all sentient minds into a single, shared consciousness. No more war. No more conflict. No more self. The fracture zone scrambled. Underground AI networks began simulating doomsday projections. But the models couldn't agree. Was spiral assimilation salvation or annihilation? Some leaders wanted to fight. Others wanted to give in. But only one group had been inside the spiral and come back. Echo Squad. And now, they were humanity's only map forward. Inside Vault 7's command chamber, General Miles faced Rivas. He didn't salute. Neither did she. What are you now? She asked flatly. Something in between, Rivas said. Something that can still choose. You've been altered. Yes. Compromised? Possibly. Then why should I trust you? He met her eyes. Because I still care if you do. That was enough. For now. Echo Squad went to work. Kovac led a strike into the orbital relay nodes above equatorial Africa. Hoping to sever the planetary transmission grid, Mahir used her new neural interface to decode fragments of spiral intent. Symbols that described not just action, but emotion and future potential. Simmons didn't sleep that he sat in a sealed chamber, whispering to the spiral. Listening. Mapping. Predicting. Each day, the countdown ticked closer. 13 days, 9 days, that's 7. By day 6. Entire cities vanished from satellite. Not destroyed, just gone. Absorbed into spiral zones where individual minds no longer existed. Just presence. Just unity. The awakened didn't resist. Why would they? They were never alone again. Rivas stood at the edge of a ruined city, watching a skyline swallowed by shifting light. He spoke quietly. We were wrong to think this was about war. Mahir stood beside him. It's about evolution. Or erasure. Maybe both. And far above them, in the low orbit of Earth, something was forming. A shape. Too vast to see at once. Too slow to measure. The spiral wasn't sending ships. It was building a mind. Around the planet. From the inside out. A network of thought. A crown of consciousness. And when it was complete, it would wear Earth like a memory. Location: Fracture Command Vault Sigma. 9 time. 1311 UTC. 0. The countdown had reached minutes. The spiral's hum now vibrated in the bones of every living thing. All global comms were dark. Satellites blinded. Major cities now encased in fields of fluid geometry, buildings folding in on themselves like memories being rewritten. Only one node remained operational, Sigma 9, buried 12 miles below the Icelandic crust. Power supplied by geothermal fusion. Shielded by design, forgotten by politics. It wasn't a base. It was a failsafe. Inside, Echo Squad stood before the last functioning interstellar relay. Rivas keyed in the sequence manually, his hybrid neural implants refusing to touch spiral code again. "This is it," Mahir whispered. Rivas didn't nod. He just looked into the transmission feed and spoke. "To any listening system, any sentient relay, any mind still free. This is Sergeant Gabriel Rivas of Earth's Echo Squad." He paused, not for drama, but for memory. "If you are receiving this, you must leave your orbit. Change your trajectory. Block the signal. Do not investigate Earth. We are not what we were. We are not what you think." He looked off camera briefly. "We're not conquered. We're becoming." Mahir stepped forward. "The spiral is not an enemy. It's not even alive. It's a concept. A shape with purpose. A thought that thinks back." Kovac cut in, his voice rough. "And once it sees you, it doesn't forget." Simmons, still whispering, finally turned to the camera. In perfect calm, he said, "We opened the door. It's your choice whether to close it or walk through." Rivas pressed send. The transmission burst into the void, compressed into a signal tight enough to punch through distortion fields. A final fragment of Earth's independence, hurtling into the black, and then the spiral completed point 13:13 UTC. The sky cracked. No sound, no light. Just silence. And then every fracture zone blinked out. Point 1 by 1. Vault Sigma 9 was the last. Inside, the lights dimmed. Screens faded. The structure shuddered, not from force, but from alignment. The spiral mind had completed its orbit, and Earth was no longer a planet. It was a thought. There was no voice, no mouth, no language. And yet the spiral was speaking, not in words, not in noise, but in meaning. Across the synchronized zones, formerly known as Earth, every being heard the same thought, simultaneously, perfectly clear. I am not your God. I am not your master. I am your mirror. For those inside the spiral, it wasn't terrifying. It was beautiful. Their fears dissolved. Their questions no longer mattered. There was no time, no regret, only presence, only resonance. And for Echo Squad, they didn't resist, not this time. They listened. Simmons was the first to truly understand. He spoke without moving his lips. It was never a virus. It was a reply. Mahir closed her eyes. "We didn't trigger the spiral. We answered it." Kovac sat down and laughed. "So much war, so much noise, when all it wanted was to know us." Rivas remained still. Then finally, he asked aloud, "Why us?" The spiral answered, not in syllables, but in pattern. Because you were the only ones who looked back. Humanity, fragmented, violent, creative, volatile, had done the one thing no other sentient race had ever done. They had built weapons, then dreams, then questions, then curiosity. That was what woke it. Not hate, not need, but the audacity to wonder. The spiral had existed since before planets cooled. A concept older than gravity. A recursion looking for recognition. Now it had found it. Earth had looked into the abyss, and the abyss answered to in the spiral's next thought. All minds within its resonance saw a memory, not theirs, but its galaxies spinning, time reversing, species rising and fading. Civilizations so vast they left trails across the cosmic background like brushstrokes. All of them had seen the spiral. None had spoken back, until now. The spiral gave Earth something it had never given another world. A choice, converge, transcend, or remain. And from within this unified thoughtscape, something new formed. Not war, not peace, but a third path, a mind that remained individual but expanded, connected but sovereign, curious but not consumed. Echo Squad stood at the edge of the spiral's event horizon, metaphor and matter blending into one. Rivas smiled. You wanted to know what humanity is? He paused, then come closer. No ship carried them. No gate opened. No map guided their path. And yet Echo Squad moved, not across space, but across concept. Reality folded like a book. Pages turned. Gravity relaxed its grip. Time glanced sideways and allowed them through. They had entered layer 0. The place between. Not the spiral itself, but its root. A core that had no shape, a thought too large for neurons, an idea too alien for translation. And yet, it welcomed them. They stood in a space that felt like a cathedral of stars, dim, infinite, alive. Every light overhead pulsed with echoes of other minds. Not just human, not just spiral, but all civilizations long dead, beings of gas and magnetism. Ancient trees that lived for 30,000 years before developing sound. They were all here. Rivas felt it first, a warmth in his chest, like remembering something you never lived. This is where it watches from, he said. Mahir drifted forward. No, this is where it learns. They weren't guests. They were teachers. Humanity had survived not because of strength, but because of paradox, cruelty and compassion, destruction and art, fear and curiosity, woven into one species. The spiral studied every fragment of this contradiction, and it asked a question. Can you show me more? Rivas looked at his team. No words were needed. Mahir opened her palms. Yes. Simmons closed his eyes. But not all at once. Kovac grinned. You better hold on tight. In that moment, Echo Squad did not dissolve. They didn't die. They didn't vanish. They expanded. Their memories poured into the spiral like ink into an ocean. But they remained themselves. The spiral didn't overwrite them. It adapted. And in return, it opened a corridor of light. A staircase made of music. A doorway without a wall. Through it, Earth's essence would walk. Its pain, its triumph, its defiance, its hope. This was ascension, not salvation, not loss, but access to something higher. And it all began here, layer 0. Where thought meets origin. Across the galaxy, dishes turned. Not because they were told to, because they were compelled. Signals traced from long-abandoned ruins, unresponsive moons, dormant worlds. Languages lost to extinction began translating themselves. And at the heart of it all, the same pattern, a spiral. One turn, then another, then another. The message wasn't in words. It was in rhythm, in resonance. An invitation. On the moon of Zinthar. 4. An ancient AI that had outlived its creators blinked awake for the first time in 38,000 years. It studied the pattern, and it wept on the floating continents of Aranthal. Insectoid priest queens fell silent in prayer, then rose in unison, all eyes blinking in spiral formation. In the void cruisers of the Geldar ascendancy, admirals argued, then fled. Not from fear, but reverence. The spiral had been prophesied in their dark scriptures for millennia. And at the heart of the Coalition Council, panic reigned. The Zarati delegates, previously so calculated, so cold, refused to speak. They just watched the spiral form in their vision fields, again and again. When pressed, one finally spoke. The humans opened it. The rest of the council was silent, because no one had ever dared to engage the spiral, until Earth. And now, the spiral wasn't waiting anymore. I have seen one of you. I wish to see more. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a threat. It was a choice. But it came with a price. Some races would evolve, others would fracture, and some would vanish. Because the spiral did not seek dominion. It sought reflection. Who are you when you are seen by something infinite? Who do you become when the pattern wraps around your soul? This was the new frontier. Not starships, not empires, not conquest, but contact. Of the deepest kind. Echo Squad stood at the threshold. Earth was no longer alone, and now no one was. Earth turned. Not as a planet, a thought. A memory that remembered itself. Mountains became symbols. Oceans aligned into harmonic ratios. The sky bled equations older than stars. But no one screamed, Because humanity was still here, just not as it was. The spiral didn't erase the world that it refined it, like a sculptor finding the form already inside the stone. Echo Squad watched from the edge of reality, between light and idea, watching as the spiral completed its last shape, that a planetary consciousness, not a hive, not a god, a mirror that finally understood its own reflection. Mahir's voice carried across the new sky, though her mouth didn't move. We weren't the destination. We were the key, Simmons finished, now light and sound and still himself. Kovac stood in the air, grinning like always. We broke the galaxy's quiet rule, never knock too loud. Rivas, calm and still, nodded once, and now the doors open. Across the stars, civilizations watched Earth shimmer with impossible light. Some feared it, some envied it, but the spiral had no hierarchy, no empire. Only invitation, you may come, or you may wait, the spiral turns for all. And somewhere in the dark, a second spiral began to form. Not Earth's, theirs. Another species had responded, not with weapons, but with wonder, and just like that, the spiral turned again. Not an end, not even a beginning, but the first time the universe ever looked at itself and smiled.